All right, so are you ready to dive into the AI explosion? Because that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the HAI AI Index Report 2024. It's packed with insights, and yeah, okay, it's a bit of a dense read, but that's why we're here. We'll break it all down for you.
Yeah, we'll extract all the need-to-know info.
Exactly. We're going to unpack where AI stands right now, what the future holds, and what it all means for you.
Sounds like a plan.
So first up, this industry is really calling the shots in AI these days.
Yeah, it's a real shift.
It's moved away from those ivory towers, you know. It's all about Google, Meta, the whole Silicon Valley scene. They're the ones building those super powerful AI models we keep hearing about.
It's a real changing of the guard. For a long time, universities were leading the charge on AI research, but the resources you need now, it's tipped the scales.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But like, how pricey are we talking, really? Give us a sense of the scale here.
So the report actually drops this bombshell training GPT-4, the one everyone and their grandma is using to write screenplays these days. It cost OpenAI a cool $78 million. dollars.
78 million. Okay, first of all, I'm in the wrong line of work. Seriously, though, that is an insane amount of money. But what does it all mean? This industry dominance, is it good news, bad news, or a bit of both?
It's complicated. It is kind of a double-edged sword.
Lay it on us.
Okay, so the good news is faster progress. Companies, they just move at a different pace than universities, right? So we can expect to see AI applications hitting the market much faster. But, and it's a big but,
Hit me with it.
this concentration of power, it's kind of worrying. If only a few companies can afford to develop these super powerful AI models. Well, what does that mean for competition? For access to these tools that could really change the world?
So not exactly the democratized AI future some people were hoping for.
Not necessarily. And here's where it gets really interesting. The report also points to this rise in open source foundation models. Essentially, some companies and researchers are going against the grain and making their AI models, even their code, public.
Okay, so a little rebellion brewing in the AI world.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these open source models. Are they like the Robin Hood of AI here to level the playing field?
I like that analogy. They definitely have the potential to make AI more accessible, but, it's not that simple. There are trade-offs with both approaches, different strengths and weaknesses we should probably unpack.
All right, you've officially piqued my interest. Let's dive into this open versus closed debate because it sounds like it has some major implications for the future of AI. But first, okay, so we've talked about, who's building all this AI, but what about what AI can actually do? Because this report isn't just about who controls it, right? It's about how well it performs, too.
And the progress is, honestly, it's pretty amazing. Like, the report highlights areas where AI is already outperforming humans, which I don't know about you, but I find that both exciting and a little unnerving at the same time.
Right. It's like, whoa, there's this one visual in the report that really got me. It compares human and AI performance, like head to head, on 9 different tasks. 9. Things like image classification, reading comprehension, even some creative stuff was in there.
Yeah.
And seeing it laid out like that, it's clear AI is pulling ahead in some pretty impressive ways.
Oh, yeah. We're not just talking about AI that can understand images and text anymore. It's translating languages, writing different kinds of creative content, answering your questions in incredibly nuanced ways. It really makes you wonder, how do we even define intelligence in this age of AI?
Right. We should probably have you back on for a whole other deep dive on that because it's a big question.
In.
Okay, so we'll put that on a list.
Yeah.
But the report does mention that even with all this progress, even with these crazy capabilities, AI is not perfect. And it can even get things spectacularly wrong sometimes.
Yeah. For all its strengths, AI is still prone to what the report calls hallucinations. Basically, instances where AI generates information that sounds totally plausible, but it's totally made up.
Like those deep fakes of celebrities that have been making the rounds online. The report mentioned those. Right?
Exactly. It's a perfect example. AI blurring the lines between reality and fiction. And it really makes you think, how do we differentiate between what's real and what's AI generated, especially as these models get more sophisticated?
Right. It's getting harder and harder. And that's kind of what makes me a little uneasy about all this. We're asking AI to do all these complex tasks that require creativity, reasoning, even some sort of moral compass. Can AI really handle that? I mean, we humans struggle with that stuff, and we invented morality.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can we actually teach a machine morality? And, the report does touch on this a bit. It explores some ways to try to measure AI's moral reasoning abilities, which I thought was fascinating.
Okay, how do you even begin to measure something like that? I mean, what's the ruler for morality?
Well, one example they give involves presenting different AI models with moral dilemmas, those would you pull the lever scenarios.
Right.
So they present these dilemmas and then they compare the AI's responses to how humans responded to the same dilemmas. And what's interesting is they found that GPT-4, the one that cost, what was it, $78 million to train, that one actually aligned most closely with human judgment.
Wow. So maybe there's hope for AI morality after all. But it still feels kind of risky, doesn't it? Think about AI making decisions in areas like healthcare or law decisions with moral implications. That's a lot of power.
No, absolutely. And it really underscores why this whole AI and ethics conversation is so important to be having right now. Because as AI gets more powerful and we weave it more tightly into our lives, well, the stakes just keep going up.
Okay, so we've talked about AI's growing power, how well these models are performing, and even dipped our toes into the philosophical realm of AI morality. But now I kind of want to bring things back down to earth for a minute.
All right.
What about AI's impact on us here and now, on our jobs, the economy, even the planet? The report gets into all that, right?
It does. And it really highlights how interconnected all these things really are. But yeah, let's start with jobs. The report points to this surge in demand for AI-related jobs, particularly in the U.S. They even break it down state by state, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, wow. So is learning to code like the new learning to play guitar?
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to get in on the AI action?
There's definitely a boom happening. But here's the thing. The report also acknowledges that this could mean job displacement, certain tasks are going to be automated and some roles might become obsolete. It's not as simple as robots are taking over, though.
More like robots are changing the game. So what skills do we need to thrive in this new landscape?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The report really stresses adaptability, lifelong learning, picking up new skills. It's not just a buzzword anymore. It's essential in this evolving job market.
So a little bit of a wake-up call for all of us, maybe. But AI's impact isn't limited to just our paychecks, right? What about the environmental cost of all this?
Yeah, that's a big concern, and it's gaining more attention. The energy it takes to train these massive AI models, it's significant. The report actually talks about both the carbon footprint issue and how AI can be used for environmental good.
Okay, so another one of those double-edged sword situations. Give us the good news first. How can AI help us save the planet?
Well, there's huge potential in areas like optimizing energy grids, designing new sustainable materials, even predicting and mitigating the effects of climate change. AI can sift through these massive data sets and identify patterns and solutions that we might miss.
That's encouraging, at least. But it sounds like we're walking this fine line. Incredible potential for good, but also some risks that we need to be very clear-eyed about.
You got it. And that brings us back to a really crucial theme that the report keeps coming back to: transparency.
Okay, so we talked about open source versus closed models earlier. This is more than that, right?
Right. This is about how much we understand what's happening inside these AI systems. And the report is sounding the alarm about a lack of transparency from a lot of AI developers, especially regarding the data used to train these models and the methods they're using.
So we don't even really know what's going into the brains of these things.
Yeah.
That's a little unnerving, to say the least.
It's a valid concern. And the report specifically mentions the Foundation Model Transparency Index. The findings are not great. A lot of developers are lagging behind when it comes to disclosing this kind of information.
But why does it matter so much?
Yeah.
Break it down for us. Why is transparency such a big deal?
Because without it, it's almost impossible to assess for potential bias. We need to know how these models are making decisions, what data they were trained on to make sure they're being used ethically and responsibly. Transparency is key for building trust in AI and holding developers accountable.
So it all circles back to that open versus closed question we talked about earlier, too. Each approach has different implications for transparency, and there's no easy answer. It's about understanding those complexities and the trade-offs.
Exactly. And those are conversations that need to be happening right now. AI is evolving so quickly, and as its influence on our world grows, so does the urgency to grapple with these ethical and societal dimensions.
Wow, this has been quite the deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of a technology that's bursting with potential, but that also comes with some really big questions we all need to be asking.
Couldn't agree more. This AI landscape, it's constantly changing. What we know today might be old news tomorrow. It's exciting, but it's a little daunting too, right?
It really is. This
great.
report gave us a snapshot of AI in 2023, but what about next year? The year after that? Is the future bright, or are we headed for a Black Mirror episode? Only time will tell, I guess.
Okay.
But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a wild ride. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of AI, and be sure to keep those thinking caps on because this is just the beginning.